The lecture hall of the Xenobiology Institute shimmered with floating hollow diagrams of extinct species, their outlines rendered in soft blue light. Rows of students, Clethans with crystalline spines, Orvani with their glass-like eyes, and the feathered HFY techs, watched their professor with a mix of admiration and boredom. Professor Taal-Vorr, a tall, skeletal cerite with a voice like grinding stone, paced slowly at the front, his claws tapping rhythmically against the polished floor. Behind him floated the final hologram, a human. Broad-shouldered, upright, deceptively plain compared to the exotic beings in the room. The hologram rotated slowly, its expression neutral. To the galactic cultures present, it looked almost unfinished. And thus, Professor Taal-Vorr announced with a rustling snort, "We conclude our unit on mytho-historical species. Once believed to be Deathworlders, a classification now considered wildly exaggerated. Humans vanished millennia ago. Primitive, fragile beings. Emotionally unpredictable. Their extinction was inevitable." The students murmured approvingly. A hand rose near the back of the hall. It belonged to a young Ceres scholar, her feathers trembling. "Professor, if they were so fragile, why were they feared?" Taal-Vorr chuckled, claws scraping together. "Because ancient civilizations allowed superstition to guide their classifications. Deathworlders, indeed." He rolled his eyes, large, pale, and amused. "Humans lack claws, carapace, fangs, venom, armor plating, radiation tolerance. Truly, a pathetic organism." Laughter rippled through the auditorium. Another student, this one a bulky Gurix, grunted. "Professor, is it true they could bond with dangerous fauna? Even apex predators?" Now the professor smirked, stretching his long, angular muzzle. "Ah yes, the famous trust bond nonsense." He waved a dismissive claw. "Legends. Exaggerations. Their so-called affinity with predators has never been observed. Not once. Because," he jabbed a talon toward the hollow, "there are no humans. Not anymore." At that exact moment, the auditorium doors slid open with a soft pneumatic hiss. Every student turned. A figure entered. Short. Upright. Soft-skinned. No claws. No armor. No visible weapons. Simply wearing a dark jacket and carrying a small datapad. For a long, stunned moment, no one moved. The human scanned the room, confused. Sorry. Transfer student? Is this Xenobiology 204? A gasp swept through the hall like a shockwave. Professor Taal-Vorr's smirk died on his face. A second hiss echoed. From behind the human, a containment drone rolled forward, carrying a snarling, caged predator creature. Six-legged, spined, frothing with agitation, its hiss shook the floor. The hall panicked. The professor stumbled backward. The human sighed, set down their datapad, and knelt calmly beside the cage. "Easy, buddy," they whispered. The predator stopped, blinking. Then, shockingly, it pressed its muzzle to the bars, whining softly. The hall fell silent. The professor's voice cracked. "Impossible." The human smiled. "Not extinct, Professor. And not done yet." A wave of pure instinctual terror rippled across the auditorium. Students clung to their seats, feathers puffed, scales rattling, bioluminescent patches flaring in panic. The Gurix student who had asked about predator bonding was now trying to fit his massive bulk under his chair, whimpering like a frightened cub. Even the ventilation system seemed to quiet itself, as if the building were holding its breath. The human, totally oblivious to the paralysis they had induced, tapped the cage latch gently with 2 fingers. Tap. Tap. The predator's crimson eyes softened at the sound. Its spines lowered. Its jaw unclenched, from "I will kill everything" to something almost puppy-like. Then it let out a low, rolling rumble of contentment. The murmur of shock grew so loud it felt physical. Professor Taal-Vorr stared, mandibles trembling. This violates every behavioral model we possess. That creature is a Kelvin razorback. Their cortisol response to humanoid proximity is... The human interrupted simply. "He's scared. The words were spoken lightly, but they landed on the room like a thunderbolt. The hollow projectors flickered as the human placed a hand against the cage, palm out. The predator shoved its muzzle forward, eager, as if comforted merely by the contact. Taal-Vorr staggered back another step. "Why you calmed it?" "Yeah," the human said. "It's okay, big guy. You're safe." In absolute disbelief, a HFY Tech student whispered, "But that species attacks everything that moves." "Only when cornered," the human said while brushing a thumb over the metal bars. "You'd freak out too if somebody shoved you in a box and wheeled you into a room full of screaming aliens." The entire class fell into stunned silence. The human finally stood, dusted off their knees, and glanced around the room. "So, they said awkwardly, tucking a stray hair behind their ear. "Is this seat taken?" Half the auditorium flinched. A few students could barely string syllables together. One raised a trembling appendage. "Why you? What are you?" The human blinked. "A transfer student?" "No," the Gurx rumbled, pushing himself back into his chair, eyes wide and pupils dilated. You must be Deathworlder." The whole class recoiled at the word. The human frowned in confusion. "Do you guys seriously call us that? That's rude." Rude, another word that hit the professor like a thrown stone. Taal-Vorr finally found his voice. "Human," he rasped. "This cannot be. Your species is gone. Eradicated. Mythologized beyond reason. How are you here?" The human shrugged. "Ship dropped me off? I filled out the paperwork. It wasn't complicated. But your kind," the professor's voice cracked again. "Your kind was supposed to be dangerous. Aggressive. Unstable." The predator behind the human gave a soft, affectionate chuff. The human smiled faintly. "We're not unstable. We're just complicated." A slow, creeping dread crawled up Taal-Vorr's spine. Because the human wasn't threatening, wasn't posturing, wasn't baring fangs or raising hackles. They were just calm. Too calm. And that, he realized, made them infinitely more terrifying. Professor Taal-Vorr's claws clicked nervously against the hollow lectern. He had spent decades teaching xenopsychology, memorizing prey, predator neurology charts, and lecturing about the ancient Deathworlders, whose existence explained half the Federation's emergency protocols. And yet, not a single academic paper had prepared him for a real human standing casually in his classroom, gently soothing a nightmare predator like it was a stressed-out house pet. The razorback pressed its snout harder against the bars, whining softly. The human chuckled. "You want out, don't you?" The auditorium collectively lost its mind. "No!" shrieked someone in the back. "Are you mad?" squealed a bioluminescent avian. "Professor, stop them!" begged a trembling insected student, gripping her thorax. "My death pheromones are leaking," whimpered another. Taal-Vorr raised all four hands frantically. "Human, student, please refrain from releasing the creature. It is classified as a Tier 7 apex threat." The human gave an innocent, baffled look. "He's a baby. A baby that eats metal," someone cried. "It doesn't eat metal," the human corrected. "It chews it for comfort." As if to demonstrate, the razorback clamped onto the steel bar, gnawing happily. Sparks danced around its teeth. Students made noises ranging from horrified chirps to wheezing gasps. The human leaned casually against the cage. "Look, I don't know what legends you've heard about humans, but we don't go around rampaging, okay? We're not extinct either. Maybe records got mixed up somewhere." Taal-Vorr's mandibles quivered. "Mixed up?" He activated a hollow screen. Ancient grainy images appeared, scorched landscapes, massive ruins, silhouettes of bipedal figures surrounded by firestorms. The class watched in stunned silence. "These are the last known images of your species," the professor whispered. "A war so catastrophic it collapsed 3 civilizations, and erased yours." The human squinted at the iconic final image, a human form, blurry and indistinct, standing atop a shattered ridge as plasma storms twisted behind them. We really need better photographers, they muttered. Taal-Vorr stared. You are joking at a moment like this? The human shrugged. What do you expect me to say? That's not me. I wasn't alive 1,000 years ago. But humans, the professor stammered. Your kind should be extinct. Lost. Gone. Guess we got better at not dying, the human replied. It tends to happen when you stop giving up. A hush fell. Even the predator quieted, watching the human with bright, attentive eyes. Professor, the human added gently, stories get distorted. Maybe you guys only saw the worst of us. Maybe you mistook survival for malice. The razorback reached a paw through the bars, tapping the human's arm. The gesture was shockingly gentle for something with claws like plasma-forged knives. The human laughed. See? He gets it. The entire class flinched again. Taal-Vorr lowered himself slowly into his chair, as if gravity had doubled. I must revise the curriculum. The human looked around the tense room, trying to soften the mood. So, they said with a small grin, who wants to actually learn about Earth? Absolute silence. Then, from the back, a timid voice. Is it safe? The human blinked. Earth? Oh no. Absolutely not. Screams erupted. The classroom dissolved into chaos so quickly the razorback actually startled backward in its enclosure, pupils dilating at the sudden shrieks, chittering, and the thump of someone fainting against their desk. The human winced. Okay, no, you misunderstood, they said, raising their hands in an attempt to steady the storm. Earth isn't dangerous because of humans. It's dangerous because, well, they paused. Because everything else is trying to kill you. That did not help. A panicked cephalopod student slammed all 8 limbs on their console. Then how did you survive? The human shrugged with a kind of practiced resignation. Mostly by complaining. And wearing shoes. Honestly, a lot of it is shoes. The professor's frills puffed in frustration. Human, please stop speaking in riddles. Your species supposedly went extinct in a firestorm that annihilated 3 planetary governments. And now you claim, casually, that you come from a world where the wildlife is a greater threat than interstellar conflict. Well, the humans scratched their cheek. Yeah, pretty much. The razorback, emboldened by the human's calmness, pressed its head fully through the bars now, exhaling hot breath across the human's arm. The class recoiled. A few hissed. One student retreated up the steps until they were pressed flat against the wall. But the human merely set a steady hand on the creature's snout. The predator rumbled, somewhere between a growl and a purr. Professor Taal-Vorr clutched his temples, his mandibles clicking. This cannot be happening. Your kind, should not exist. Entire academic fields are built on the assumption that Deathworlders, particularly humans, had eradicated themselves long before the Federation's modern era. Yeah, the human said softly, gaze lowering. I've read the reports since I got here. All those hollow recordings of blazing cities. The old myths about firewalkers. The war everyone says we caused. They exhaled a slow breath. We didn't. Not the way the history books frame it. That got everyone's attention. All eyes, compound, reflective, faceted, glowing, fixed on the human. Taal-Vorr's voice wavered. Explain. The human leaned against the razorback's cage, thoughtful. Humanity didn't die out. But we hid. The war wasn't ours alone. We were caught in the crossfire of species that could terraform with weapons fire. When the atmospheric rifts opened, we went underground. Whole biomes shifted. Communications fractured. Generations passed before we resurfaced and realized the galaxy thought we were gone. You resurfaced, repeated a serpentine student with disbelief curling through every syllable. Not all at once, the human continued. Some colonies evolved on divergent timelines. Some stayed sealed for centuries. When the Federation first found post-war Earth, you saw the ruins but not the bunkers beneath them. You mean your return was recent? Taal-Vorr asked faintly. About 60 years ago, give or take. The human gave a half-smile. The reunion was messy, and awkward, and full of paperwork. A wave of murmurs shivered through the room. The Razorback, sensing the shift, nudged the human's shoulder with surprising tenderness. The human chuckled and rubbed beneath its jawline, right where the dense fur met the armored throat plates. The creature melted into the touch like a spoiled cat. Every student watched, frozen between horror and fascination. Taal-Vorr's frills flattened. This defies every accepted model of xenopsychology. The human gave him an apologetic shrug. Sorry. Humans tend to ruin models, and protocols, and historical timelines, the professor muttered. And occasionally furniture, the human admitted. The Razorback licked their sleeve. The human didn't even flinch. Half the class nearly fainted again. See, the human said lightly. Not everything terrifying wants to hurt you. Sometimes, it's just curious. Professor Taal-Vorr stared at the human, at the predator, and then at the trembling classroom. This is going to be the longest semester of my life, he whispered. The Razorback's tongue left a thin streak of saliva across the human's sleeve, and the creature settled its massive chin on the edge of the enclosure, as if the class lecture had suddenly become the most interesting thing in the universe. Its tail thumped. The sound, heavy, rhythmic, echoed through the amphitheater like distant artillery. Several students ducked under their desks. Professor Taal-Vorr extended a trembling claw toward the datapad on his lectern. I must update the hazard status of this demonstration. Level 3 containment breach, pending. It's not a breach, the human assured him. It's just being friendly. The professor's eyes widened, pupils thinning into pinpoints. Friendly? Its species is classified under Apex grade instinctive aggression. The human squinted thoughtfully. Is that like super mean? It means, Taal-Vorr hissed, that if its fight or flight response triggers, it is biologically inclined to choose fight against anything smaller than a cargo hauler. The human considered this for an unbothered beat. Yeah, that tracks. A strangled sound erupted from a feathered student in the third row. Professor! Should we evacuate? Taal-Vorr opened his mouth, shut it, then opened it again with visible suffering. Protocol states yes. Protocol, the human said gently. Doesn't know this Razorback had a rough morning. Its handler made it travel sedated, which it hates, and this new environment smells like disinfectant and fear. Mostly fear. 30 students tried not to look guilty. The Razorback huffed, blinking slow. The human's fingers moved calmly along the creature's jawline, following the direction of the fur, avoiding the sensitive bone ridges beneath. The creature let out a low, rolling rumble that vibrated the floor. A kite-inflated student whispered, Is it purring? Yes, the human said. That's a good sign. A good sign of what? Taal-Vorr demanded. That it likes all of you, the human replied cheerfully. A wave of horrified silence swept the room. The human didn't seem to notice. They leaned against the enclosure, speaking with the relaxed tone of someone giving gardening advice. Razorbacks are social predators. They bond through scent and sound. If it thought you were threats, you'd know. Trust me. On what grounds? Taal-Vorr croaked. Should we trust you? The human tapped their chest lightly. Deathworlder instincts. They're not just for running away. Murmurs again. Disbelief. Ah. A few whispered recalculations of previously held prejudices. Taal-Vorr clenched his jaw. Very well. Assuming, for the sake of academic neutrality, that your reaction is accurate, what do you propose? The human looked around the room as if the answer were obvious. Let me out of the audience area and into the enclosure. Taal-Vorr nearly fainted. Absolutely not. But the Razorback perked up immediately, tail thumping harder. The metal floor shuddered. The human pointed, smiling. See? It already knows me. That is precisely what I fear. The professor muttered, pressing a hand over his face. Professor, the human added softer. If you want your students to learn the truth about predators, about any species, you have to start with trust. If I walk in there, calm, steady, showing it I'm relaxed, they'll learn something science can't measure. And you believe, Taal-Vorr said slowly, that your presence alone stabilizes it? The human shrugged. I've had worse first impressions. The Razorback snorted in agreement. The room waited breathless. Taal-Vorr stared at the human, then at the creature, then back at the human. This decision will haunt my scholarly career, he whispered, trembling as he disabled the outer energy barrier. The human stepped forward, and the Razorback knelt. The moment the field shimmered out of existence, the room collectively inhaled. Students gripped desks, feathers puffed, plates rattled, and someone in the back began whispering what sounded suspiciously like last rites. Even Taal-Vorr retreated a full 3 paces, his claws clacking nervously across the lectern's surface. But the human didn't hesitate. They stepped inside the enclosure like someone entering a quiet garden, not a cage containing a creature classified by the Galactic Zoological Authority as an organism capable of reshaping local ecosystems through sheer temperament alone. Their posture was easy, shoulders loose, feet steady. Nothing about them said, "Pray." The Razorback's huge head lowered instantly, as though gravity had increased just for it. Its fur rippled in anticipation, glowing faintly along the ridge lines, those bioluminescent seams that warned, in practically every known language, do not approach. The human approached anyway, but with the kind of calm that made watching them feel surreal. They stopped directly in front of the predator, and offered their hand the way someone might greet a dog on a sunny afternoon. The Razorback inhaled the scent deeply, nostrils flaring, and a shiver ran across its immense shoulders. Then, impossibly, it pushed its massive forehead forward until it gently brushed the human's chest. A wave of murmurs rolled through the amphitheater. Shock. Confusion. Maybe a hint of betrayal at the universe for refusing to follow its own rules. The human chuckled under their breath. "Hey, there you go. I knew you remembered." Taal-Vorr choked. "I remembered? You have history with this specimen?" The human glanced over their shoulder. "Not this specific one. But Razorbacks in general?" "Yeah." They scratched behind the creature's ear, and the bioluminescent lines dimmed from warning red to a soft amber glow. "I volunteered at a rescue center back on Earth." An aquatic student raised a trembling fin. "You rescued those?" "Sure," the human replied, as the Razorback leaned its entire massive weight against them, forcing them to brace their feet. "Most of them were just scared. Or lonely." "Lonely," Taal-Vorr repeated, sounding personally insulted by the concept. "A species known for territorial dismemberment was lonely?" "Everyone gets lonely," the human said simply. The Razorback gave a deep huff, almost affectionate, and nudged the human again, this time so forcefully the students gasped as the human stumbled backward. But the human only laughed, steadying themselves against the creature's jaw. "There we go," they murmured. "You're doing great," one of the front row students whispered. Is this some kind of Deathworld spell? Did the human hypnotize it?" Taal-Vorr rubbed his temples, despairing. "No. This is behavioral anchoring. A predator recognizing a stable presence and an established trust-scent profile." "But," his voice wavered, "but the only species known to accomplish such a feat with Razorbacks was recorded in pre-extinction Earth archives over 6 millennia old." The human didn't seem to hear any of the panic, or the unraveling of centuries of academic certainty. They simply pressed their forehead gently against the Razorbacks, creating a circle of calm in the middle of chaos. The Razorback's tail swept the floor with slow, heavy rhythm. The human murmured, "Good boy." A thundering purr rolled through the amphitheater, shaking the walls. Taal-Vorr's data tablet slipped from his claws and clattered to the floor. And for the first time in his entire esteemed academic career, Professor Taal-Vorr considered that the universe had just presented him with a paradox big enough to dismantle an entire field of study. The amphitheater remained frozen, as if time itself had paused in deference to the human and the enormous predator. The Razorback's purr reverberated in the metal flooring, creating a low hum that the students instinctively felt in their bones. Taal-Vorr sank fully into his chair, mandibles slack, wings trembling as he tried to comprehend what he was witnessing. Years of lectures, simulations, and holodata had taught him that apex predators were the ultimate test of fear and dominance, and here was a human, casually rewriting all known laws of survival. The human finally straightened, brushing a fleck of dust off their jacket. "All right, class," they said in that same casual, absurdly unthreatening tone. "If you want to learn about Earth, you need to understand one basic truth. It's less about strength, and more about improvisation." A student, an Orvani with eyes like spun glass, ventured the question everyone was thinking. "Improvisation? You mean humans survived by chance?" The humans shook their head. "No. By noticing patterns. By understanding that fear is contagious, and sometimes controlling it is more useful than fighting back." They crouched slightly, letting the razorback lean against their side. "The galaxy assumes predators are scary because they're big, aggressive, or armored. But most of the time, that's just a performance. They're scared too. They just don't admit it. You learn to read them, and suddenly, what seemed like death itself, just negotiable." Taal-Vorr twitched a mandible. "Negotiable? You mean to suggest?" The human interrupted, turning their calm gaze toward the entire room. "I mean that the Deathworlder myth? It wasn't wrong because humans were aggressive. It was wrong because nobody understood what humans actually did. We didn't conquer everything by brute force, we adapted. We observed. We learned, and yes, we cared. About each other, and about the animals around us. And apparently, about the classrooms we suddenly show up in." The razorback's massive head tilted, nuzzling the human's shoulder. Sparks from the chewed steel bars still floated lazily in the air, but the creature's posture radiated trust. The amphitheater, once a chamber of terror and hubris, now felt like a meditation hall. Even the fluorescent panels seemed muted, as if in awe. A young Clethin whispered from the back, almost inaudibly, Is this how humans deal with apex predators?" "Yes," the human said softly, turning their head to glance at the small, trembling figure. "And that's how we deal with most of the scary stuff in life. Not by fighting it. Not by running. By showing it calmly that you're not the threat." The professor groaned, tapping his claws against the lectern in a nervous rhythm. "This cannot be canonically integrated. My textbooks, my databases, all of it is obsolete." The human tilted their head, considering. "Textbooks? Look, I get it. You have models, rules, and projections. That's fine. But sometimes the universe doesn't read your textbooks. You improvise. You observe. You pet the razorback." A ripple of incredulous laughter ran through the room, though half the students were still frozen in terror. The human gestured to the predator. "See? It's not about killing you. It's about respect. Boundaries. Patience. A lot of humans are still learning this, by the way. But some of us? Well," they patted the massive creature on its armored neck, and it leaned in further. "We got the hang of it." Taal-Vorr buried his mandibles in his claws, muttering a string of academic curses no one could fully translate. This overturns centuries of xenopsychological doctrine. Every principle I've ever taught." The human tilted their head. "Good. That means you'll remember this semester." A soft, collective gasp swept the students as the razorback stretched, yawning wide enough to expose rows of fearsome teeth. But instead of snapping or attacking, it leaned against the human, relaxing completely. Even the faint scent of hot metal and fear that had once clung to the amphitheater seemed to dissipate. "You want to see something even cooler?" the human said casually. "Predator trust isn't the limit. Humans aren't just about survival, they're about influence. You can make the scary things curious, cooperative, even affectionate. You just have to know how to be calm enough for them to notice you." Taal-Vorr felt something chill run down his spine, part awe, part sheer terror. "Influence over apex predators through calmness?" "Yep," the human said, shrugging. "We're subtle like that. Terrifying, but subtle. And yes," they added, leaning against the razorback, That includes the ones you thought extinct. A hush fell over the classroom. The bioluminescent RHY text froze mid-flare, the Guruk stopped trying to disappear under his chair, and the Orvani blinked in disbelief. Even the ambient hum of the ventilation system seemed to pause, waiting for what would come next. The human turned to face the professor fully, hands tucked into their jacket pockets. Professor Taal-Vorr, I hope you like chaos. Because I'm here to teach a whole semester of it. The razorback shifted its massive bulk, nudging the human forward as if urging them to begin the real demonstration. The students stared, some frozen with fear, others gripping the edges of their desks as if the human's calm presence were an invisible force reshaping reality. Taal-Vorr's claws clicked against the lectern, a futile metronome for his spiraling panic. All right, the human said, voice casual but commanding. First lesson, observation. Everyone, watch closely. Predators communicate constantly. It's subtle. Micro-expressions, posture shifts, even the way they breathe. They crouched slightly, placing a hand on the razorback's massive paw. The creature lowered its head further, eyes half-lidded in relaxation. See? No aggression. No dominance display. Just attentive curiosity. A RHY tech student whispered, trembling. It's actually calm. Yes, the human said with a small smile. Calm. Because it trusts me. Trust doesn't come from size or strength. It comes from consistency. Predictability. Respect. Taal-Vorr hissed, mandibles vibrating. This violates every protocol. Every known xenopsychological model. Apex predators are supposed to escalate fear responses exponentially, especially in unfamiliar environments. And yet, he trailed off, gesturing weakly at the scene before him. The human ignored him, focusing on the razorback. They spoke softly, almost conversationally, narrating the creature's micro-movements, the subtle twitch of a spine, the tiny flex of a claw, the dilation of pupils. Students leaned forward, eyes wide, struggling to reconcile what they were witnessing with centuries of academic certainty. Notice how it's lowering its bioluminescent warning lines, the human continued. In a natural setting, that's a predator signaling, I'm aware of threats, but I'm not attacking. In human terms, it's almost like it's smiling. Or at least, comfortable. A Guruk student stammered. I've never seen a razorback behave like that without restraints. Exactly, the human said. And that's the point. Fear is contagious. Humans survive not just by being dangerous, but by reading fear and projecting calm. It's not magic. It's psychology, biology, empathy. The professor's holopad flickered in distress as he tried to pull up behavioral data to reconcile the contradiction. Every chart, every simulation, every historical record insisted razorbacks would escalate hostility, not regress into docility. Yet here they were, a massive apex predator, kneeling, nuzzling, purring, utterly unthreatened. The human glanced at the students, expression faintly amused. You're all thinking the same thing. How can one person, so small, so unarmed, control something like this? Answer is simple. I'm not controlling it. I'm guiding it. By giving it a reason to trust me. That's the trick humans learned a long time ago. Control isn't always about force. A chitin-plated student muttered. But humans are weak. No armor, no claws, no plasma resistance. Exactly, the human said. That's why humans are terrifying. We have nothing, so we learned everything else. Observation, improvisation, trust, and they tapped their chests lightly. Brains over brawn. Predators respect competence, not size. The razorback leaned fully against the human's side, closing its eyes. Its bioluminescent warning seams dimmed entirely. The amphitheater seemed to breathe in relief, or maybe in disbelief. The room smelled faintly of ozone from the sparking cage bars, but the pervasive tension had eased, replaced by something closer to awe. Taal-Vorr's voice quavered. I have taught generations of xenobiologists, yet I have never. He stopped, claw clattering against his hollow pad. Seen patience achieve dominance without aggression. The human grinned faintly. That's because patience is underrated. Most species misread aggression for strength. But true survival? It's about balance. Calm in chaos. Courage in the face of fear. You don't fight the universe. You make it notice you exist, and sometimes it listens. A silence fell over the classroom. Students exchanged glances, some fascinated, some terrified. The razorback, once the living embodiment of apex aggression, now rested its head gently on the human's shoulder. Even the hum of the ventilation system seemed to quiet in respect. Taal-Vorr slumped, a mix of scholarly panic and awe twisting his frills. This changes everything. Every course, every study, every model. And yet... He gestured weakly at the calm predator. It works. The human laughed softly. See? Chaos with a side of education. You'll survive the semester, Professor. And your students? They'll learn more than any textbook could ever teach. The human stepped back slightly, letting the razorback stretch its enormous limbs, yet it didn't leave their side. Its tail thumped once, twice, sending a low vibration through the floor. Students instinctively gripped their desks, some even held their breath. The amphitheater was a maelstrom of terror, fascination, and disbelief, and the humans seemed completely oblivious to the chaos they had orchestrated. Okay, the human said, hands in pockets. Lesson 2. Intimidation is only a tool if you understand it. Most species assume size equals power, teeth equal threat. That's technically true, but incomplete. They crouched, tilting their head toward the razorback. See how he's letting me touch him. He's huge, dangerous. But the moment he senses calm, it flips the dynamic. He could still kill me in seconds. But he chooses not to. That's where humans excel, reading choice. A Gurk student, still pressed into the back of their seat, whispered, "So, you're saying humans survive by understanding fear?" "Exactly," the human said with a faint grin. "And not just fear. Stress, hunger, territorial instincts, social hierarchies, read them, respect them, and act accordingly. Most species react automatically. Humans? We observe, then improvise." The razorback rumbled low, circling slowly around the human, testing boundaries without aggression. Sparks from the chewed bars crackled faintly but harmlessly. A young Sarah scholar raised a trembling wing. "Is it listening?" The human nodded, brushing a hand over the creature's spine back. "Yes. And it's responding. Not because I'm strong, but because I'm consistent. That's what the Federation misses. Apex predators aren't mindless killing machines. They're incredibly sensitive to trust cues. Humans just learn to exploit that, politely." Taal-Vorr pinched the bridge of his mandibles. I trained entire fleets of xenobiologists to handle Tier 7 predators. Every field manual, every simulation, every contingency plan assumes hostility. And yet you've achieved control through. He paused, searching for words. "Empathy? Sure," the human said casually. "Call it empathy, patience, subtle observation, whatever helps you sleep at night, Professor. Works every time." They glanced at the students. "Notice how he's relaxed now. No spikes raised, no snapping jaws. He's curious. He trusts me. That's a huge advantage in any encounter." A HFY Tech student whispered, awestruck. "But humans aren't genetically engineered for this. You're fragile." "Fragile," the human echoed with a chuckle. "Sure. That's why we became adaptable. Fragility teaches caution, and caution teaches strategy. If you can't rely on raw strength, you compensate with awareness. And if you survive enough encounters, you end up like this." They gestured at the razorback, which had now fully lowered itself to the floor, tail thumping lightly. Taal-Vorr's mandibles clicked nervously. "And this teaches your students how to handle apex predators?" "Yes," the human said, voice patient, almost tutoring. "Observe. Stay calm. Build trust. Understand your opponent. And very important, don't panic. Panic is infectious. If you panic, the predator panics. If you're calm, the predator starts thinking instead of attacking. That's the edge humans use, every single day. A bioluminescent avian murmured. It's like psychology is more effective than teeth and claws. Bingo, the human said, leaning against the razorback. Brains over brawn. That's humanity in a nutshell. Small, weak, unarmed, but consistently alive. The razorback made a deep, resonant sound, somewhere between a purr and a growl, nudging the human's side. The amphitheater felt smaller somehow, the metallic walls echoing the hum of this new dynamic. Fear had been replaced with astonishment, awe, and a growing sense that everything the students had learned about the galaxies, Deathworlders, might be wrong. Taal-Vorr whispered, more to himself than anyone else. I have to rewrite everything, every assessment, every classification. The human tilted their head, smiling faintly. Good. It's about time someone did. The classroom trembled faintly as the razorback shifted, tail thumping against the metal floor, sending vibrations through every desk and chair. Students instinctively stiffened, some gripping consoles and notebooks like lifelines. The human didn't flinch, even as the massive predator's snout brushed against their shoulder. Lesson 3, the human said calmly, is about observation in context. Apex predators are rarely solitary. They respond to environment, to social cues, and to history. You can't just meet one and assume you understand them. You have to look at the patterns, their routines, what they react to, what they avoid. A Ceres scholar whispered, patterns, but humans are supposedly extinct. How did you learn all this? The human smiled faintly, as if it were the simplest question in the galaxy. By surviving. That's what humans do when everyone else assumes you're gone. We watch. We adapt. We interact. We make mistakes and we remember them. That's how I know the razorback isn't going to attack me, even though it could kill me in an instant. Taal-Vorr muttered through his mandibles, voice trembling. All models, all behavioral simulations, all risk assessments, invalidated. Exactly, the human said. Which is why humans are terrifying. Not because we're strong, but because we think. We notice. We adapt faster than almost any other species. And sometimes, that thinking manifests in ways that look impossible. The razorback leaned into the human's touch, massive claws curling gently against the metal floor. Sparks from earlier still drifted lazily, but there was no aggression, no threat. Its bioluminescent ridges pulsed softly, now a pale amber instead of the alarming reds and whites it had emitted before. A HFY Deck student stammered. So, you're saying humans survived by being clever? The human shrugged. Clever is one word. Observant is another. Calm under pressure is another. But the most important? Empathy. Understanding others, whether they have claws, teeth, or wings, gives you a survival edge. And if you can make a creature that could theoretically rip you apart kneel beside you, well, you've got a powerful tool in your corner. A Guruk student groaned, half in awe, half in terror. Tool or weapon? Both, the human said simply. It depends on how you use it. Most humans don't use apex predators to kill. We use them to learn, to observe, to survive. But if threatened, well, you don't want to see us when we're threatened. The razorback's massive head rested against the human's chest. Every eye in the amphitheater followed the subtle movement of the predator's muscles, the gentle twitch of its spines, the slow rise and fall of its chest. The human's hand stroked along the armored ridge, speaking softly in a low, melodic tone. And yes, the human said, turning to the students, this is exactly what people meant when they called humans Deathworlders. But they got it wrong. Not because we were violent, not because we were aggressive, but because we were unpredictable. Adaptable. Survivors. Taal-Vorr whispered hoarsely. Unpredictable. That explains why historical records conflict with behavioral expectations. The human nodded, as if this were obvious. Exactly. The galaxy assumed extinction because we didn't fit their patterns. But humans? We survive, even if everyone else has written us off. A quiet awe fell over the room. Students began to take tentative notes, some still trembling, others wide-eyed with the thrill of witnessing a living paradox. Taal-Vorr's mandibles twitched nervously, hovering over his console. I must record this. Every observation, every interaction. The human leaned back against the razorback, hands in pockets, smiling faintly. Don't bother trying to predict humans with old models. You'll only end up frustrated. Just watch, observe, learn, and maybe survive a little better yourself. The amphitheater felt impossibly still, as if holding its breath. Even the hum of the ventilation system seemed muted, respectful. The razorback exhaled a deep, rumbling sigh, leaning fully into the human's side. The students, realizing the creature wasn't going to attack, allowed themselves to relax slightly, though awe and fear lingered in equal measure. Taal-Vorr muttered, half to himself, half to the universe. I have just witnessed the impossible. And yet, it works. The human straightened, letting the razorback shift its enormous bulk slightly to accommodate their movement. All right, they said, voice casual but commanding. Final lesson for today, communication. They gestured toward the students, who were still wide-eyed and gripping their desks. It's not enough to calm a predator or survive a war. You have to communicate clearly. Species, humans, everyone, you can't assume intent. You have to read it, show it, and confirm it. Taal-Vorr's mandibles clicked nervously. Communication, with apex predators, through behavioral cues, and subtle empathy, is... Exactly, the human interrupted. Apex doesn't mean stupid. Most predators are highly intelligent. They observe constantly, adjust their strategies, and react to inconsistencies. Humans learned early that the way to survive wasn't by attacking first, it was by understanding first. The razorback made a low, inquisitive rumble, brushing its massive forehead against the human's chest. Sparks from the steel bars shimmered faintly, but harmlessly, as if acknowledging the calm authority the human projected. The bioluminescent warning lines had faded to soft amber, then gradually to almost imperceptible glows along its spine. A Ceres student whispered, "It actually understands you?" "Not just understands," the human said, crouching slightly to meet its enormous gaze. "It trusts me. That's communication. Not spoken words. Not telepathy. Not firepower. Just trust. And consistency. That's what humans survived on. Millennia of unpredictable war, climate, predators, and the galaxy itself." Taal-Vorr pressed a claw against his forehead, muttering, "Entire doctrines, entire predictive models, rendered obsolete by a single individual." The human shrugged, a faint, almost apologetic smile tugging at their lips. "Sometimes the universe just doesn't fit into neat little boxes, Professor. Rules exist to guide, not to limit. You can predict a lot of things, but some things, like this, require observation, empathy, and patience." They scratched gently behind the razorback's ear, eliciting a deep, vibrating purr that resonated throughout the amphitheater. A bioluminescent avian shivered audibly. This is impossible. Apex predators docile, by human touch? Yes, the human said. Impossible according to your models. But humans don't follow models. We make them obsolete, then survive anyway. They straightened, glancing at the students. Lesson takeaway: sometimes the most dangerous, the most feared, the most impossible thing isn't the predator. It's the presence of someone who knows how to navigate it calmly. The razorback nudged the human's side, pressing its massive paw lightly against the metal floor. Sparks drifted harmlessly from the bars, but there was no aggression, only trust, curiosity, and a subtle, immense intelligence. Students scribbled frantic notes, their feathers, scales, and eyes wide in a mixture of awe and fear. Taal-Vorr whispered, voice trembling, I must rewrite every xenobiology curriculum. Every protocol. Every classification. Humans are no longer hypothetical. They are." He stopped, searching for words. "A living anomaly. The human grinned faintly. A living paradox works just fine, they said. But don't worry. By the end of the semester, you'll see humans aren't just surviving, they're teaching the galaxy to survive, too. The amphitheater fell into a tense, quiet awe. Even the ventilation hum seemed muted, as if the building itself were absorbing the lesson. The razorback's tail thumped rhythmically, a grounding presence in the middle of chaos. The human stepped back slightly, arms crossed casually, observing the room as though waiting for comprehension to catch up with reality. A Guruk student muttered from the back, voice trembling. I think. I understand now. Humans aren't extinct. They are evolved. The human chuckled softly. Close enough. Just remember, evolution isn't always biological. Sometimes it's psychological, tactical, and occasionally social. And when you master that, predators, galactic war zones, bureaucracy, you name it, become negotiable. Taal-Vorr slumped further into his chair, mandibles clicking absently. This will haunt every xenobiologist alive. And yet, it's brilliant. Horrifying. Brilliant. The human's grin widened slightly, a glint of mischief in their eyes. Good. That's the idea. The human glanced around the amphitheater, noting every wide-eyed student, every trembling wing, every rattling claw and glowing scale. All right, they said, voice calm but carrying authority. Final part of today, application. All that trust, observation, patience, communication, it doesn't matter if you don't apply it. They gestured toward the razorback. This is a predator. Dangerous? Absolutely. But it's also cooperative. Why? Because I showed it consistency. Calm. Respect. That's how humans survived extinction events, wars, and hostile planets. That's the secret no one bothered to record correctly. Taal-Vorr's frills had flattened entirely, his mandibles trembling in a mixture of awe and panic. I taught simulations, contingency drills, and behavioral models based on centuries of historical records, and they're obsolete. You've survived where we assumed humans could not. Yep, the human said, stepping closer to the razorback. And if you want your students to survive too, Professor, you let them see it. Let them understand the nuance. Fear is easy. Observation is harder. Trust? Hardest of all. They crouched slightly, meeting the predator's massive gaze. Watch closely. The razorback exhaled a low, resonant rumble, nudging the human's shoulder. The students froze, some clutching consoles, others gripping their feathers or claws in disbelief. See? The human said, voice soft. He's responding. Not because I command it, not because I dominate, not because I'm stronger, because I'm calm. Predictable. Reliable. A Ceres scholar whispered, awestruck. So, humans survive, by being consistent? Not just consistent. The human corrected gently. By being aware. By noticing fear, aggression, hunger, patience, boredom. By responding in ways that make the other side, predator or rival, choose cooperation over conflict. That's humanity in practice. The razorback leaned fully against the human, tail thumping slowly, sending a deep vibration through the floor. Sparks drifted lazily from the chewed steel bars, harmless and oddly ceremonial, as if the predator acknowledged the human's authority without question. Students scribbled notes, feverishly, realizing they were witnessing not just xenobiology in action but a demonstration that would rewrite galactic history textbooks. Taal-Vorr whispered, voice hoarse. All assumptions, every calculation, every model, invalid. Humans, not extinct. Humans, a force, unpredictable, subtle, intelligent. He trailed off, lost for words. The humans straightened, hands on their hips, a faint grin tugging at their lips. Exactly. And now you know the rest of the story. Humans didn't just survive, they adapted. We learned to navigate fear, predict behavior, and build trust where no one expected it. And if we can teach a razorback to calm down in a room full of screaming aliens, imagine what we can do anywhere. The amphitheater seemed to hold its collective breath. The razorback rumbled deeply, exhaling a puff of warm air across the floor. Students, still trembling, realized they were in the presence of a living paradox. The predator that could have torn them apart now rested peacefully, guided by nothing but calm observation and mutual respect. Taal-Vorr slumped fully into his chair, mandibles clicking weakly. I cannot. He waved a trembling claw toward the human and the creature. You've undone centuries of certainty. And yet, his voice softened into awe. It works. It works flawlessly. The human chuckled softly, resting a hand on the razorback's armored neck. That's humans for you. Terrifying, unpredictable, maybe impossible, but alive. And teaching the galaxy, one lesson at a time. The amphitheater remained silent for a long moment, the only sound the slow, rhythmic thump of the razorback's tail against the floor. Then, somewhere in the back, a student whispered, almost reverently, I think I understand, humans. The human looked around the room, expression faintly amused, and said with a grin, Good. Lesson's over. Now, who wants to learn how to survive a Deathworlder, politely? The entire class flinched, simultaneously terrified and fascinated. The razorback gave a contented snort, and the human simply smiled, calm as ever, standing amid chaos yet somehow at peace. History, xenobiology, and every predictive model in the galaxy had just been rewritten in a single afternoon. And Professor Taal-Vorr, trembling, mandibles clicking, frills flattened, realized with absolute certainty, this semester would haunt him for the rest of his life.